Hey, this is Toby. So in this video we continue to code our stochastic EA, and I will show you a simple filter you can apply not only to this indicator but to many different indicators to improve your strategies. Okay, let's go. Okay, so in the first part of this stochastic EA coding tutorial we coded the core logic of the EA and the indicator, and I will link the first part up here. And in this part I want to add a few components like different entry signals and also a filter to improve the strategy. Okay, now before we start coding, I think it's very important that you understand what we are trying to create. So I will explain it here on a chart. So the first component or the first thing I want to add to the EA is to have a different type of entry signal. So right now the default entry signal is we buy when we cross into this lower zone and we sell when we cross into this upper zone. But I want a second type of entry signal. So when we exit this lower zone, I want to buy. And when we exit this upper zone, I want to sell. And I also want to have the option to reverse the signals, so we do exactly the opposite. So let's switch to Visual Studio Code and we can start coding. So here we are in Visual Studio Code. If you want to know how to use this editor for MQL5, I made a video, I will link it up here. But you can also do this in the default meta editor. Okay, so this is the EA we created in the first part. Let's just compile to make sure we have a working EA here. And now we can start coding. So the first step we want to do is to add another input for our signal mode. So for this, we want to create a enum for the different modes, and therefore we create another input, another comment section here, call this global variables, and here we will declare our enum. So let's call this enum maybe signal mode, and the first option here is maybe exit cross normal, and let's also write a comment. So this is like the default option we already have. So exit cross just means here if we are in the channel and we exit this channel here, then we would take a sell trade. If we exit this channel here to the downside, we would take a buy trade. So this is the first mode. And the second one is also exit, or let's call this entry cross normal. So this just means, let's take a look at the chart. If we enter this channel here, we would take a buy trade, and the same for the opposite side. If we enter this channel again, we would take a sell trade. And let's copy these two options here. And let's have exit cross reversed and entry cross reversed. Let's also change the comment. Let's align this. Okay, so this is our enum. And let's take a look at this option here. So exit cross reversed. Here, if we exit the channel, here, for example, to the downside, normally we would take a buy trade, but with the exit cross reversed, we would take a sell trade. And here, if we exit to the upside, we would take a buy trade. And the last option here is our entry cross reversed. So normally, if we enter this channel, we would take a buy trade, but with this reversed option, we take a sell trade here and a buy trade here. Okay, so let's compile to make sure we have no mistakes. And now we can use this enum for one of our inputs. Okay, so here in our input section, we can now use our signal mode. Let's do this after here, our trading comment. So input, and the type is now our signal mode, and let's call this input signal mode. And by default, this is maybe set to the exit cross normal, so our default option. And let's also add a comment here, signal mode, and let's also align all the other comments just to make it look beautiful. Okay, so now we have our signal mode input here, and we have a drop down with all these options here. Okay, let's compile again to make sure we have no mistakes. And now we can use the signal modes to check for new signals in our onTick function. So let's go down to our onTick function, and here we check with a simple if statement if we want to open a new buy position, and here with a simple if statement if we want to open a new sell position. Of course, with the different signal modes, these if statements will get quite complicated with a lot of brackets. So to simplify things, I want to write a separate function to check for the signals, for a buy signal and for a sell signal. So let's scroll all the way down after our last custom function here, close positions, and let's write a separate check signal function here. So let's start with a simple comment. So this function will just check for new signals, and the return type will be a Boolean. So if this function returns true, we want to open a trade. And let's name this check signal. And for the parameters, we want to specify if we want to check for a buy signal or for a sell signal. So we will have a parameter of type Boolean called buy sell. And true here, if this parameter is true, this means we want to check for a buy trade, and if this is false, we want to check for a sell trade. Okay, and another parameter will be the number of open positions. So count by sell. So here we'll just pass the counter we get from our count open positions function in the onTick, and depending, of course, on the direction we want to check. So if we want to check for a buy trade, we would enter here the count buy in the onTick, and if we want to check for a sell trade, we would enter the count sell variable in the onTick. Okay, and this, of course, is of type integer, like this. And let's also return here in the end, maybe just false. And now we should be able to compile. So let's see. No mistakes here. And now we can code the logic. So the first step here is to return false when we have already a position open. So we can just write a comment here, return false if a position is open. So we do a simple check. If our counter here is greater than 0, we just return false. And of course, we can do this also outside of this function in the onTick, but I like to keep the onTick, on init, on dinit as short as possible. So that's why I do this here inside this check signal function. Okay, so let's compile. No mistakes. Okay, so the next step here is to check for crossovers. So I will just write a comment here, check crossovers. And I want to declare a variable here of type integer for the lower level, because if you remember from the last video, we only have a input for the upper level, and just to make things easier, we just calculate the lower level here. So 100 minus our input upper level. Now let's create a Boolean here, and let's call this variable maybe upper exit cross. And now we just check if we have a crossover with the upper level of the stochastic. So we will just use, it's pretty much the same as we have here in our if statements. So I will just copy this here from the cell if statement, and I will paste it here. So the buffer 0 has to be greater or equal to our input upper level, and the buffer main 1, the previous value, has to be below our input upper level. In this case, we have a cross or a exit cross, for example, here, or yeah, here and here and here. So this will be stored in the variable upper exit cross here, and then we can use it later and check it depending on the signal mode. Okay, let's compile, and let's also add the other options here. So second one, upper exit cross, second one, upper entry cross, and here buffer main, the current value has to be below or equal to the upper level, and the previous value has to be greater than the upper level. Next one here, this one is, let's call this lower exit cross. So for this, current value of our buffer has to be below or equal to our lower level. Now we can use this lower level here, and also here, here, and here. So this has to be below or equal to our lower level, and our buffer main, the previous value, has to be greater than the lower level. Okay, and the last one here is called lower entry cross, and this last one here is when we cross here into our channel. So the current value has to be greater or equal to our lower level, and the previous value has to be below this lower level. Greater or equal to a lower level and below the lower level. Okay, so I think that's it for now. We have these 4 booleans here, and we can use them with the signal mode. So first of all, let's compile to make sure we have no mistake. And now we can write a logic for the signal mode. So let's just write a comment here, check signal, and we will use a simple switch case statement here to check our input, or to switch our input signal mode. And if the case is exit cross normal, this case we want to return, and here we will check with a simple condition if we currently check for a buy trade. So if our buy sell is true and we have our lower exit cross true, we return true. And else, or another option to return true is here if we check for a sell trade, of course. So this buy sell is false, our parameter, and now our upper exit cross here is true. In this case, we also want to return true. Okay, let's check this again. So if we have a buy, if we want to check for buy position, our lower exit cross has to be true. So this would be lower exit cross here. Then we would buy. And for the sell trade, our upper exit cross has to be true. Our upper exit is, for example, here. Okay. And now let's write the other options. So next one is the entry cross normal. Here we want to return. Again, if our buy sell is true, and of course our lower entry cross is true. And if we check for a sell trade, we want to return true when our upper entry cross is true. Okay, next case. is the exit cross reversed. And here we want to return true. If we check for a buy trade, so let's see this exit cross reversed. So exit cross reversed, we want to buy here, for example. So our upper exit has to be true. So upper exit cross has to be true. And here our lower exit cross. Then we will take a sell trade. Okay, and the last condition, the last option here is the entry cross reversed. And here we return true if our upper entry cross is true. And if we check for a sell trade, we return true if our lower entry cross is true. Okay, I think that's it. Let's compile. And that's it for the check signal function. Now we can use this function in our onTick. And first of all, we want to test, of course, if our logic here is correct. So yeah, let's go to the onTick and replace our if statement here. Check for buy position with our new check signal function. And here we want to set true because we want to check for buy position. And we pass the counter count buy. If this function returns true, we open a buy position. And the same goes here for the sell if statement. We can just replace this now with check signal, this time false. We want to check for a sell trade and we give our counter sell to this function. And yeah, and then we take a sell trade here and let's compile and see if this works. Okay, so we got some errors here. Of course, we need to add the if statement here. Like this. Let's see if we can compile now. Okay, we have no mistakes. And now we can switch to MetaTrader and test our logic. Okay, make sure you select your EA here, Stochastic EA. Select a symbol, time frame, doesn't really matter. Make sure that you have selected the open price only mode and check the visual mode here. Now for the inputs, let's start with the first signal option here, exit cross normal, no stop loss, no take profit, close trades, true, K period 20, and for the level, I would always take 80 because this is the default level of the indicator. Okay, so let's start this visual test here. And let's just wait for a few trades. Okay, so right here, we have our exit cross. We cross the upper level, we take a sell trade. If we cross here the lower level, we take a buy trade. Sell trade. And here a sell trade. And here a buy trade again. Okay, so the first signal mode is working correctly. The exit cross normal. Let's take a look at the second one, entry cross normal. So this time we wait to enter back into the channel. So for example, here's a good example. Here a sell trade because we are above the upper level and then we enter back into the channel. We take a sell trade and here we are below the lower level and we enter back into the channel and we take a buy trade. Okay, so also the second mode is working correctly. Let's take a look at the third option here, exit cross reversed. So now we take a sell trade here if we enter or if we cross the lower level from the channel, and we take a buy trade here if we cross the upper level. Okay, so this is also working correctly. Last signal mode here is entry cross reversed. And I know this testing is a little bit boring, but it's very important that you test that your EA does the things you want your EA to do. Because a lot of times you code something and you have a little mistake in your logic, and then the EA trades something completely different. So it's important to test this. And the best way, I think, it's with a visual test. Okay, so last one, entry cross reversed. So here we wait again for the entry of the stochastic into the channel, and then we take a reversed trade. So here a buy trade, and here a sell trade. Okay, so all the signal modes are working correctly, and we can go back to Visual Studio Code and maybe start with a filter. Oh, and by the way, if you are wondering why we enter the trade one bar after the crossover, so for example, here with this bar, the crossover happened between this bar and this bar, but we enter the trade on the next bar open tick. So that's completely fine, because we don't want to look into the future, because MetaTrader already draws the bar, even if we are in open price only mode. Okay, and of course you can use this entry signal mode here for many other indicators too. For example, RSI, Bollinger Band, we coded here on this channel. You can also use or implement some kind of signal mode to have different signals to test and maybe improve the strategy. Okay, and the second component I want to add for our EA is a simple filter. I call this the clear bar filter. You can also use this for other indicators. So basically we can set a number of bars, and then we only take signals if there was no crossover within the last, let's say, 10 bars. So for example, this signal here would be valid because for the last 10 bars, there was no crossover here of the lower level. But this signal here would be filtered out because we already have a crossover here of the upper level within the last 10 bars. And I also want to be able to reverse this filter. So we can say we only want signals that had a crossover recently. So then this signal here would be filtered out because there's no cross within the last 10 bars. And we would take this signal here because there was a crossover. Okay, so let's switch to Visual Studio Code and let's code this filter. Okay, so let's start with the inputs. So here, after our stochastic inputs, I would just add another section here, and let's call this, maybe clear bars filter. And first input we need here is a Boolean. So we can set if we want to reverse the filter or not. So input, let's call this clear bars reversed. And by default, let's set this to false. And here we just write a comment, reverse clear bar filter. And the second input here is a integer. And let's call this input, just clear bars. So here we enter the number of bars. We want to look to the left. So let's do a default of 0, which means the filter is inactive. And let's also add a comment, clear bars, and then 0 equals off. Okay, so let's compile to make sure we have no mistake. And now we can go to our check inputs function to check the inputs. The only input we need to check is here this integer. This should not be below 0. So let's scroll down, check inputs, and we just add another if statement here. So if our input clear bars is below 0, then we want to return false here and write a message clear bars below 0, return false. Let's compile again. Okay, and now we can write a function to check the filter. Okay, so let's scroll down all the way to the end. Here after our check signal function, now we write a new function. Let's start with a comment to check clear bars filter. And yeah, this function has a return type again of Boolean. And let's name this check clear bars. And for the parameters, we want to have one parameter also of type Boolean, just to specify if we check this for a buy or sell trade. And in the end, we can just, maybe return false for now. And the first step here, or let's compile, so no mistakes. The first step here in this function is to return if the clear bar filter is inactive. So we can just write return true if filter is inactive. And here we do a simple if statement, check our input. If this is 0, in this case, we just return true. Okay, let's compile again. Perfect. Okay, and the next step here is to declare a variable, again of type Boolean, to just decide if we need to check for the lower or the upper level. So let's call this just check lower. If this is true, we need to check the lower level. If this is false, we need to check the upper level. And we set this with some conditions here. So if our buy sell parameter is true, so we check this filter for a buy trade, and our input signal mode is exit cross normal, or our signal mode is equal to entry cross normal. In this case, this check lower is true because we need to check the lower level, because we take a buy trade here, and exit cross normal and entry cross normal is at the lower level. But also if here our buy sell is false, in this case we also want to check if our input signal mode is equal to this time exit cross reversed, or our input signal mode is equal to entry cross reversed. Okay, so if that's the case, we also want to check the lower level, and otherwise, if this is false, we check the upper level. Okay, also make sure you don't forget here this exclamation mark at the second buy sell. And let's compile again to make sure we have no mistakes. Okay, but before we continue to code here, in our check clear bars function, I created something in Paint to make it easier to understand what we are doing. And I think it's very important that you understand what you do. This way you can modify it later on your own. So right now we get the value 1 and 2 to check for the signal, but I want to change this. So we start at index 0, bar 0 basically, also with our buffer, and then we get 3 values for the check signal and additional values if we have our check clear bars filter active here. So let's change this. So let me scroll up to where we get the indicator values here in the on tick. Here get indicator values. copy buffer. And now let's change this here. So this first parameter here is for the buffer number of the indicator. So we only take a look at the main line of the stochastic, because there's also a signal line, but the main line is index 0 here. So this will stay the same. But here, this is the start position. So right now we start at index 1 here, and we get two values. So this one and this one. But we want to start at index 0. So we change this here to 0. And the number of values we want to get are at least 3 values here. So this 0 value, 1 and 2. So 3 in total. Plus, if our check clear bars here is active, we need additional indicator values to check the filter. So we can say 3 plus our input clear bars value. So if we have this set to 5, for example, like this is also here in this example here, 5 values for the clear bars. So this means we have 8 values here. So we start at 0, get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So up until this value here. And again, we store this in the buffer main. And of course, we also need to check if this function was successful, if this returns our requested values. So also here 3 plus, maybe we do some brackets, 3 plus our input clear bars value. Okay, now we have the values. If our clear bars value here is 0, so the filter is off, we only get 3 values here, 0, 1, 2. And yeah, whatever the number is for our clear bar, look back to the left, basically, we get additional values here to check the filter. I hope this is easy to understand, or better to understand. And yeah, now of course we also have to change here where we check the signal, because now we are interested not in buffer main 0, but in 1 and 2 for the crossover check. So everywhere where we have index 0, we need 1 now. So 1, 1, 1. And where we have 1, we change this to 2. 2, 2, 2, 2. So 1 and 2. This is our crossover. And yeah, I think that's it. And now we have the correct indicator values. And now we can take a look here at this for loop. Maybe we compile again to make sure we have no mistakes. Okay, I think it looks fine, yeah. Okay, so I think now it's easier to understand this for loop. We start when we want to check our clear bars filter at index 3. So right here, because this is already checked from our signal. We have a crossover here, then we check for the filter. So we start here at bar or buffer index 3. And we do this as long as our counter here is below 3 plus clear bars. So if this is 5 in our example here, this value is 8, of course. And so we check here also the index 7, which is the last value we check. So we want to make sure within these bars here, there's no crossover of the upper line, for example. Okay, so let's start with the for loop here. First of all, maybe we check for the upper level. So in this case, our check lower here is false. So I add a exclamation mark here at the start. So that this is false. And now we have basically two ways to have a crossover, from the upside and from the downside, of course. So we need to check both. So let's start with buffer main I minus 1, which is this value here, value 2 at the start of our for loop. If this is greater than our input upper level and our buffer main value I, which is 3 here at the first loop, is of course less or equal our input upper level. In this case, we have a crossover. So the value 2 is above and the value 3 is below. Then we have a crossover. And of course, the other option here, I need to add a bracket. The other option is basically the opposite direction for the cross. So our buffer main again, I minus 1 is below our input upper level, and our buffer main I is greater or equal to the input upper level. Okay. And this is our if statement here. Let's see if we got the brackets correct. So here we need to add another bracket. So our check lower is false, and we have a crossover from the upside or a crossover from the downside of our upper level here. In this case, we can return true or false depending on our input reversed value. So I hope this is easier to understand with the drawing here. And we loop basically through all the values here, and for each value we check I minus 1. So if this loop here I is at value 6, for example, then we check value 5 and 6 if we have a crossover. Then we loop, we add 1 at the end of the loop, and then we check 7 and 6 and so on. And we do this for all the values here until here this index 7. Okay, now we only need to return true or false based on our input reversed value. So we can write a simple if statement here. If our input clear bars reversed is true, in this case we want to return true, because if we reverse the filter, we want to have a crossover. So if we have a crossover and this is true, we return true, so we have a crossover. But else, if we don't reverse the filter, we want to return false for our function. So we can just write a simple print statement maybe. So let's write clear bars filter prevented, and then we set maybe buy or sell depending on our parameter. So we can check our buy sell here. If this is true, we check this filter for buy trade. So clear bars filter prevented buy, or else sell here. And then we continue with signal, clear bars filter prevented buy or sell signal. And then we can maybe also print out the values where we have detected a crossover. So we can just write cross of upper level at maybe at index, and now we have our index I minus 1. Let's start with this I minus 1, and then can you see? No, sorry. Let me scroll this up a little bit like this. Okay, so I minus 1, and then we can just do a arrow maybe, and the second one is just I. So when we have a crossover, of course we also want to return false here, and we'll print this message: clear bars filter prevented by signal cross of upper level at index 5 to 6, for example. Okay, so let's compile, make sure we have no mistakes. So I got a error here, some operator expected. So here I'm missing a comma, like this. Let's compile again. Okay, no mistakes. And I just maximized the editor again. So here we need to add else to the statement. So if our clear bars reversed input is true, we return true, and else we return false. So you need to add this else here. Let's compile again. Okay, and now we can do the same for the lower level check. So I will just copy this if statement here, and I will paste it here inside our for loop, right here. Yeah, so this is our for loop now with our two if statements, and maybe we add a comment here, check upper level, and here for the other if statement we write check lower level. And now of course we need to change here this exclamation mark, we need to delete this. So if our check lower is true, and we need to change here the conditions, so we need to change this, and here this has to be greater or equal, this has to be greater than the upper level, and this less or equal. And also we need to change the upper level. Of course, now we want to check the lower level, so we can just add a bracket here, 100 minus our upper level to get the lower level value. And I will just copy this and replace here the upper level with 100 minus upper level, like this. Okay, then we have our check here, what we need to return. So this will stay the same. Now here, clear bars filter prevented by sell signal, cross of lower level at index I-1 to I. And we return false. Okay, so this is our for loop. So the for loop ends here. This is the complete for loop. And let's compile. Okay, so here after the for loop, we need to add another simple if else statement. So let me just write if our input clear bars reversed is true. In this case, we want to print a message. So I will just copy this here. So clear bars filter prevented by sell signal. And then here we can just write no cross detected, like this. And we return false, and else we return true here. And we don't need this return false here in the end. So this is our function. Let's compile again. And this is the whole check clear bars function with our for loop here, our two if statements in the for loop for the upper and lower level, and here this if else statement after the for loop. And now we can use this check clear bar function in our onTick function. Okay, so let's scroll up to our onTick function. So right now we just check the signal here, and now we can add here in this if statement our check clear bars function. And here again for the buy trade, we want to set this to true. And we do the same here for the sell position check. So check clear bars, and here we write false. Let's compile again. And let's start at the top of the EA and go through the code one more time before we test the EA and do some optimization and backtesting. Okay, so here we are at the very top. We have our include here, our global variables, which is our signal mode, enum, our inputs, our second global variable section. Okay, so maybe we can just cut this here, delete this here, and add this to our section up here, like this. Let's compile again. Okay, then we have one global variable section here, our input section. On init function, we check the inputs, we set the trade, the magic number, we get the handle, we set the buffer as serious. On the init function, we just release the indicator. On tick function, we check if we have a new bar tick, get the current tick, get the indicator values here with our clear bar value. And yeah, we count the open positions, and then we check if we can open a buy trade or a sell trade. And here's the check input function, is new bar function, count open positions function, normalize price function, close positions function, our check signal function, where we check for a crossover, our check clear bars function, where we check if we had a crossover in the last, for example, 10 bars. Okay, so that's it. Let's compile one last time, and now we can switch to MetaTrader and start testing. Okay, so here we are in the test again. Just select a symbol, a time frame, and let's take a look at the inputs. If you don't see your inputs of the clear bars filter in Visual Studio Code, you need to compile with a script to reload the EAs in the MT5 platform. So you can just click here, compile with a script, or you can just reload the platform, close it, and open it again, so you can see the inputs here of the clear bars filter. So first of all, I want to test the signals again. So let's leave the clear bars filter here at 0. So no filter. And let's just start the visual test to see if our signals are still working correctly, because we changed the index of the buffer. Yeah, it looks fine. And now we can activate the clear bars filter. Okay, so here we just maybe enter 100 to make sure we prevent every signal. And let's just start again. So 100 bars, if there is a crossover, yeah, we can see 4 and 5. So this was the last signal here. And we basically see there was a cross between index 4 and 5, which is this one here. So we don't open a trade. Let's clear this again, wait for the next signal here. Okay, so here, no signal because we have a crossover here, bar 76 to 77. And let's see where this, you cannot see everything. Okay, so 76 to 77. So this is probably here, this cross. Yeah. So that's why we don't open a trade. So our filter is working correctly. Let's also reverse the filter. And let's change this to 10 maybe. So we need a cross within the last 10 bars to the left to open a trade. So right here we open a trade because here we have a cross within the last 10 bars. But let's wait for a cross of the lower level again. So if we cross the lower level now, we should prevent the signal because we don't have a cross in the last 10 bars. So let's see. Yeah, we have a crossover, but we get a message clear bars filter prevented by signal, no cross detected. Here, last 10 bars, no cross. Okay, let's wait where we actually get a valid signal. Here again, no cross. Again, no cross. Okay, but here, this is a valid signal because here we have a cross within the last 10 bars. And we open a buy trade. Okay, so looks like the filter is working correctly. Now we can start with some backtests and maybe a simple optimization. Okay, so let's maybe run a simple optimization here. Euro dollar, 1 hour time frame starting in 2019. I use here my custom symbol. Maybe I should switch to the default broker symbol so you can replicate the results. Of course, if you are at DarwinX, if you use another broker, then the results are different. Okay, so 1 hour time frame starting 2019, open price only and fast generic algorithm, recovery factor for the optimization criteria, and for the inputs, yeah, let's just optimize everything. I know this is not something you should do if you want to develop a robust strategy, or at least you need to have some tests to verify that the results are stable and not over optimized. But let's just run this and let's wait for the results. Should not take too long because we only have the 1 hour time frame. We can already see some great results. So the best result here, 200 trades, and this is the equity graph. Of course, here's one with less trades, but higher profit factor. Yeah, and let's take a look at the settings here. So we have our clear bars filter active. And the number of bars is pretty high because, yeah, that's really the only way to filter out trades with this filter, I think. And yeah, the upper level is pretty low. So we get a lot of signals, but our clear bars filter filters a lot of signals out. So we end up with just a few good trades. We have a stop loss. This is very important. We have a take profit. Yeah. And exit cross reversed. So this looks like for euro dollar, exit cross reversed is the best signal mode. So exit cross reversed is if we exit here this channel, we take a sell trade. Okay, maybe we take a look at another symbol. Maybe here out cat, same time frame, same settings. Yeah, maybe we also activate this here, close trades by opposite signal. So we have the option to only close the trades by stop loss and take profit. Okay, so let's start this optimization. Should also be very fast. And okay, so here are the results. Let's take a look at a few of them. So the top one here, yeah, looks pretty amazing. This one here also, and maybe one with less trades. This one here. Yeah, you can test this for yourself. I think the overall logic is pretty amazing and simple, and you can also apply this to different indicators like the RSI and the Bollinger Band with the clear bar logic, and also the different entry modes. And then you can test different indicators again with the new filter and improve your strategies. So if this video was helpful for you, would be nice if you just leave a like. And if you have a question about automated trading, about coding in general, just write a comment, and I will see you in one of the next videos. Bye bye, have a great week.